1200 BC. The Hittite Empire and the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II fought a devastating battle at Kadesh for the Amur region and made peace. The Amorites, who worshipped the weather god from Babylon, descendants of Akkad, and sun worshippers, gained their independence. But the region of Amuru and Kadesh were completely destroyed, and those expelled from Babylon to Canaan were left in ruins. The Ancient Europe. Greece. 1139 BC. Whether Paris, the young prince of Troy, eloped with the beautiful Helen or abducted her is unknown. What is known, however, is that Helen was married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta and the brother of the Greek king.
I want her back.
Well, of course you do.
So, the Greeks went to war against Troy. The legends speak of countless heroes. Achilles, Odysseus, Heracles, and many more, but only a few returned. Agamemnon, the king of Greece, dispatched, over the course of the war, for more than 10 years, 1,000 ships and over 50,000 warriors. Menelaus, his brother and the king of Sparta, led the army. His goal, the rescue of his wife, the beautiful Helen. All of Greece rallied to his cause. 20, no, even 30 allies. Ithaca, Crete, and other tribes, like the small band of Myrmidons under Achilles. Although the population of Troy is estimated at 10,000, the Trojans also had allies in the region. The most famous were the Amazons, who intervened later in the events. Most likely, Menelaus, the king of Sparta, landed with up to 10,000 Greeks. Accordingly, the Trojan army was vast, led by Hector, the prince of Troy. He led the Trojan army to the coast and confronted the Greeks. The Trojan army had skilled spearmen and excellent archers. Reinforced by horse-drawn chariots commanded by Hector himself. Hector of Troy, the elder prince and general of the Trojan army, in the prime of his life, tried to halt the Greeks at the coast. But he realized the Greeks could not be halted. The Greeks relied on spear and shield. They had only a few archers and no cavalry, but they were determined to win. Despite heavy losses and being outnumbered, they demonstrated their superior martial skills. And so, the Trojan War began. Ancient Europe. Greece. 1239 BC. The beautiful Helen, married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, ran away with Paris, the younger prince of Troy, which angered the Greeks. Agamemnon, the king of the Greeks and Menelaus' brother, the king of Sparta, sent an army. Many heroes joined them. Hector, the older prince of Troy, faced the Greeks on the coast, but realized that the Greeks can't be faced. He retreated to Troy with his army and defended the city with about 5,000 warriors. On the coast, the Greeks demonstrated their superior combat skills. Despite heavy losses, they drove the Trojans into retreat. The reputation of the Greeks preceded them. Any enemy who ventured to found themselves facing a hedgehog. The Greek phalanx simply pushed the enemies out of the streets, out of the city. A massive number of Greeks followed Agamemnon's call to Troy. The bravest of the brave. Countless legendary warriors. Except for Hercules, who couldn't swim. The Greeks besiege Troy. Thousands of them stand in front of the walls. 5 meters high. But since the Greeks themselves had no walls and never needed them, because with the phalanx formation they simply pushed out any enemy who got into a Greek city with their pointed sticks. Stand there. For 10 years. Before the walls of Troy. 3 to 5 meters high. The Trojans were cowardly and decadent. They didn't want to fight with the dirty Greeks. But the Greeks had Odysseus with them. The cunning attacker initially did not want to go to Troy. And when the Greeks attacked the coast, he plundered all the islands and retreated to the southeast. He didn't want to be part of the attack on Troy and thought, as clever as he was, that he could simply avoid the battle area around Troy to the east. The cunning Odysseus just needed a bodyguard. Because the best, of course. So he promised his friend Achilles fame and honor beyond his imagination. So Odysseus pointed the direction east, following the nose, in order to circumnavigate Troy. And so began the adventures of Odysseus and Achilles. They first disembarked in the Tarhintasa area, where the god of lightning and thunder, the god of arrows and chariots, was worshipped. There, Odysseus found some funny herbs and plants and handed them out for smoking, like the beaten-up, well-armed local farmers do. Odysseus wanted to hide there until everything was over and promised his friend Achilles a temple of the gods full of fame and honor. Achilles found a temple of the gods. Despite Odysseus' advice not to visit the ancient temple of the gods, Achilles visited the ancient temple of the gods. There he encountered horrors beyond his imagination on his path to fame and honor. On his way to Olympus, wild beasts came out of nowhere, snapping and barking, with huge deformed heads, carcasses, and fur between their teeth. Cerberus came from hell, a huge dog. Odysseus later said, "It shattered into 100 pieces. Into 100 small deformed beasts that bite your leg and grab your spear." Accompanied by dwarf dog people who sleep and socialize with the beast, Achilles showed no mercy and killed the monster with just one blow. Then you met the men of the Amazons. You were chased away by their wives because of your cowardice. They shot at their enemies with bows and were masters at it. The Greeks have never seen anything like this. As you approached the enemy, he just ran away, like a coward. A trick of the god of cunning. The Greeks were taken aback and slowly approached the cowards until they had used up all their arrows. Now the cowards decided to fight, but quickly ran away to their wives. Achilles continued undeterred on the path to the temple of the old gods. But even Odysseus couldn't have guessed what came next after Achilles couldn't be persuaded to return. Did he come across centaurs? Horse people. Half horse, half human. With huge cocks and spears. They threw spears and feces at their brave comrades. Then they attacked head-on. Achilles slaughtered them all and advanced. He was on the verge of achieving the glory of the gods. Just a little bit more. The supplies were replenished by Odysseus on horseback. Achilles continued towards the temple complex and found the Minotaur. A mania's fascination of pure madness and violence. He had wheels for legs and had to guard a glorious treasure. Divine power. And gold. The Minotaur came with lightning and thunder and snapped. Achilles and his brave comrades stood shoulder to shoulder. The Minotaur shattered. Achilles found his way to Olympus. Gold. Stole the magical powers of ancient mystical Babylonian gods and burned down the temple of the thunder god. Achilles wanted to know from Odysseus where there was more fame and gold to be had. So Odysseus wanted to bring Achilles back to the northwest, to Troy, as quickly as possible. But the wind carried you east, to Hades. Achilles sacked more temples and defeated numerous monsters from the underworld. For a whole year, across Syria and Canaan, all the way to Egypt. And from there he took advantage of the wind again and sailed north to Troy. With his faithful friend Odysseus, who diligently wrote everything down. On their journey they met small, brown, hairy, robust dwarfs from the mountains. Those who smelt iron and hoard gold, which communicate with demonic mythical creatures from the underworld. Evil creatures, as well as the wild horse people who live in the forest. And to the one-eyed men from Canaan, Cyclopes, who each lost an eye because of an arrow. It must have been a powerful arrow. Also on the oil eyes, the painted desert dwarves who melt gold and subdue the black devils. When you finally arrived in Troy after a year, you found that the Greeks had not yet conquered the city. Because the Trojans had walls and the Greeks had none. The siege lasted 10 years. The Greeks demanded that the Trojans come out. But they didn't want to. So the Greeks stood before Troy for 10 years with their sharp sticks. There have been many epic and legendary raids along the coast. In western Anatolia there were many temples to plunder. The Greeks ate everything. Entire areas and regions. And drank the rivers empty. The drunken Thracians from northeast Greece crossed the border into Anatolia via the land connection near Byzantium and penetrated further northeast to Hattusa. They brought the Scythians with them. They passed the endless hills of the Kaskians horse people and made friends with them. A Thracian tribe that lived on the river Nestos and around Lake Vistanida in the neighborhood of the Sicanies and Sapians. According to ancient Greek legend, they were ruled by King Diomedes, whose man-eating horses were stolen by Heracles. The Greeks sent 30 to 50,000 warriors to Asia Minor and besieged Troy for 10 years. They ate it all, then they ate the rest, then they ate all the rest, then they ate their ships, then, before they ate each other, Odysseus had an idea. A rescue plan. For all. From the remaining wood that they hadn't eaten yet, Odysseus made a huge wooden horse and hid in it. The Greeks hid behind the remaining bushes and bushes in the desert like barren surroundings and waited. You had to make sure you didn't eat all the bushes so your cover wouldn't be blown. They waited, dying of thirst and starving, wrapped only in rags, behind stones and bushes in a corroded, barren, desert landscape. After the Trojans hadn't seen anything from the Greeks for a long time, they came out and found the wooden horse and a bunch of starving Greeks. They were gone. The horse, a peace offering. Too ugly and pathetic not to take with me. The victory over the Greeks. The trophy. Now they stand in the thousands before Troy. But the Trojans have a wall. The Greeks have never seen a wall and don't know what a ladder is. 3 meters high. Approach it, and you will be shot at by archers. an impregnable fortress.
Who's for a drink? There's time. Not in my unit, there isn't.
That's how the siege of Troy began. The Greeks besieged Troy for 10 years. Unlike the Greeks, the Trojans had some horses, and with their chariots, they could leave the city whenever they wanted. The Greeks could only chase them and throw spears and stones. But the Trojan allies doubted that they could defeat the Greeks in the field. The Trojans hid behind their walls and refused to face the Greeks. This disgusted the Greeks.
Are we having a staring contest or a fight?
The Trojans danced and sang all night while the Greeks waited outside the walls with their sharp sticks. For 10 years. So Achilles, the greatest braggart and strongest warrior of the Greeks, challenged Hector, the older prince and general of Troy, to an honorable duel, which he could not refuse. At that time, when two heroes clashed in battle, everyone else stopped fighting, made way, and watched. It became silent. Hector appeared with his splendid chariot. Achilles, the Black Knight from Greece, and the Myrmidons gave their respects. Hector charged. But he was no match for Achilles and was crushed. It turned out that the horse-drawn chariots were more for show and completely unsuitable for battle. It was clear that the Spartan Greeks were superior to the decadent Trojans in combat. However, the Greeks were not immune to the Trojan arrows. But one day, the Greeks disappeared with their ships. They realized they couldn't climb the walls. Too high. Left behind was a huge wooden horse, which the Trojans took because they loved fancy things. What they didn't love were unwashed Greeks, like the cunning Odysseus, who hid with a few warriors inside the wooden horse. At night, he sneaked out and opened the gates. Because what the Trojans didn't know is that the Greeks didn't sail back to Greece, but after 10 years of siege, they had eaten their ships out of hunger and then hid in the bushes. Now the Greeks stormed the city, killed everyone, and burned everything down to the ground. But even after the 10-year war, the Greeks couldn't recover and, over time, lost their significance. Most heroes fell. Achilles was dead, Odysseus cursed by the gods and lost at sea. Only one Trojan escaped. Troy. After the conquest by the Greeks, a man, Aeneas, escaped the flames, with his father on his back, and his son by his side. After a long journey across the Mediterranean, he landed on the coast of Latium and founded a city there as a refuge for Trojans. The Trojan prince Aeneas founded a city in Italy, but this city is not Rome. On his way back to Greece, unfortunately without his friend Achilles, Odysseus was once again caught in false winds and was confused on the high seas for several decades. Meanwhile in Egypt, Jerusalem, a man stares into the fire. His name is Moses. God speaks to him through a burning bush. He tells everyone what the Egyptian Pharaoh is doing and that he is the only true God. Moses has a plan. He wants to help his new friend and builds a network of biblical agents in every palace, from here to Hattusa, ready to blow everything up. He unleashes the biblical plagues on Pharaoh, Ramses, and all of Egypt. No, even about the world. Earthquakes shake entire regions as Moses leads his people from Egypt to the Promised Land. For 100 years. It affects several cities and entire regions and continents. Plagues shake the known world. Only the Greeks ate their way through the country like locusts. Now ebb and flow, hunger droughts, disease, cockroaches, and earthquakes. When the emaciated Greeks return to Greece after 10 years of war, find your homes in ruins, except the palaces and their kings. The Greeks have seen walls and gold in Asia Minor, as well as decadent, cowardly Trojans, and are beginning to question themselves. What kings and palaces are good for if the kings have neither walls to protect nor gold to repair? So they burned down the remaining palaces, high with the huts, low with the palaces. The protest spread like wildfire across the country, and there were numerous palace protests. After a miserable campaign, everything destroyed, cursed by the gods. The best dead or lost. The wrath of the gods fell upon you, the entire Olympus. For their failure, their disgrace in the field. Forever. But not with the Greeks. For their part, the Greeks cursed the gods and swore bitter revenge against each and every one of them. They jumped into their boats and paddled east again, to Little Asia, across the Aegean Sea, full of myths and legends, its waves full of adventure, looking for the gods to kill them all. And to take revenge. So the Philistines came. When the Hutti heard this, the loose military alliance of the Anatolians tore apart and collapsed. The old core of Tarhuntassa, Kizzuwatna, and Isowa remained. The north and west in Anatolia, Asia Minor, was completely decimated and fled. Except Lucca. The remaining rulers of the Hutti declared themselves autonomous and broke away from the former great empire of the Hutti, like the more Canaan empire of the island of Alassija, today's Cyprus. Over time, the Hutti disappeared completely due to further internal disputes. More and more tribes split off and declared themselves autonomous. The plundering pirates and Greeks even reached Egypt. The Philistines came. Ramses III, protected by warding off the 9 bows. The foreign countries all separated from their islands together. They moved away and the countries were scattered all at once in the hustle and bustle of battle. No country stood before their armies, from Adi, Kadi, Carchemises, Arzawa, and Alasia onwards were now uprooted in one fell swoop. A camp was set up at a location inside Amuru. They destroyed his people and his land as if it had never existed. Now, with the flame prepared before them, they advanced against Egypt, their fortress. As early as 1209 BC. In the 4th century BC, Libyan units advanced as far as Thebes, but were beaten and taken prisoners, then impaled. For the first time, the Libyans made use of an alliance of the Sea Peoples. In this case, the character of the previous smaller raids changed into the first war of conquest that started on Libyan soil. The Libyans themselves had called up all able-bodied men into the battle. Additionally, the allied tribes followed. However, the pharaoh was able to successfully repel all attacks from the west. Shortly after the death of Ramses III, there are also mentions of battles against the Sea Peoples and reports of an attempt by these peoples to invade Egypt by land. Ramses III was able to avert the immediate danger to Egypt. Nevertheless, his country lost power. Both Palestine, where the 2 Sea Peoples, the Philistines and Thracians, went ashore, as well as Syria was lost as a result. Amuru was completely destroyed. In addition to the Amorites, which also included the Jamchad kings, a large number of Hurrians lived here. As early as the 17th century BC, the city god Jamchad, the weather god Hadad, was worshipped, and the Amorites, the last followers of the Sumerian Babylonian weather god Hadad, were destroyed. The Amorites, who were once expelled from Mesopotamia to Canaan. The outcasts of Akkad.
Jesse! We need your help! The Philistines are attacking!
Tormented by war, blinded and enslaved by the Egyptians. They once came to Egypt with the Hyksos, but the Egyptian gods were able to prevail in the long term. The slave Moses, who escaped from Egypt and represented the last cult followers of Anu, led a revolt against the Pharaoh. He gathered his followers and ran away. He trained his people in the desert to no longer believe in anything, and good at lying, for 100 years. And he found gold. After the yoke of the Egyptians ended by the sea peoples, the southern region of Canaan rebelled against the territories occupied by the sea peoples. The foreign conquerors could not ensure peace. Goliath the giant led a heavily armored company, which was known for its brutality, and was challenged by the shepherd kings. David, the future king of Israel, rebelled against the sea peoples, against the foreign invaders, because he had God on his side. So he gathered his comrades and armed them with stones. They loved throwing stones as children and were professionals at it. He challenged Goliath and started throwing stones at him. This didn't sit well with Goliath and his heavily armored troops. With bronze helmet, heavy bronze armor, and a shield, he set off in a manner worthy of Havel to frame his huge spear into David's chest. So he attacked David, but he just ran away. That bastard. Goliath tried to grab him, but that didn't work. David simply ran away with his comrades all day and threw stones at Goliath until he was green and blue and fell dead. And after this it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and humbled them. And David took the reins of government out of the hand of the Philistines. He also smote the Moabites and measured them with the measuring line. He laid them on the ground, and he measured out 2 lengths of cord to kill them, and 1 full length of cord to keep them alive. So the Moabites became subject to David and paid him tribute. David also smote Hadadezer the son of Rechab, king of Zobah, when he went to restore his power on the Euphrates River. And David captured from them 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 infantry, and David paralyzed all the chariot horses, but he retained 100 chariot horses. And the Arameans, of Damascus, came to the aid of Hadadezer king of Zobah. But David killed 22,000 men of the Arameans.
The Bible says that David took the food and made his way to the battleground. It was a pretty long walk. That's Bethlehem. David grew up there. That's Bethlehem, home of David and lots of sheep.
And he placed garrisons in Aram of Damascus, so that the Arameans became subject to David, and paid him tribute, for the Lord helped David wherever he went. And David took the golden shields that belonged to Hadadzer's servants and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betha and Beretai, the cities of Hadadzer, King David took a great deal of brass. And when Toi king of Hamath heard that David had defeated all the forces of Hadadzer, then Toi sent Joram his son to King David to ask him about his well-being and to congratulate him because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him, for Hadadzer was constantly at war with Toi. And he had with him vessels of silver, and of gold, and of brass. These also King David dedicated to the Lord, with the silver and gold that he had dedicated to the Lord from all the nations he had subdued. From Aram, from Moab, from the Ammonites, from the Philistines, from Amalek, and from the spoil of Hadadezer the son of Rehob, king of Zobah. And David made a name for himself when he returned, after he had defeated the Arameans in the Salt Valley, 18,000 men. And he put garrisons in Edom. He placed garrisons throughout all Edom, and all the Edomites were subjected to David, for the Lord helped David wherever he went. And David reigned over all Israel, and David prosecuted justice and righteousness for all his people. And what is the moral of this story? That's definitely coming next episode, so if you don't want to miss anything, then press the like button now or flip the don't want to miss switch. See you next time.
The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing.
He has no weapons.
I will fear no evil.
He has no armor. I've got 20 shekels on Goliath.
Hey, David, can I have your sling? You know, after the fight? Young shepherd man, if you're looking for some sheep, I'm afraid that Goliath, well, let's just say that he gets really angry from yelling at these Israelites. There aren't any sheep left around here.
I accept Goliath's challenge.
Oh, do you mean the one to see who can spit watermelon seeds the farthest? I'm afraid only Philistines qualify for that contest. It's in the fine print. Besides, Goliath is incredible.
No! I'm here to fight Goliath.
Oh, that challenge! Are you sure?
Yes.
Come here, boy. I will crush you and be your body body full of
I don't think he likes you. He said some very mean things about you that I cannot repeat. And something about feeding you to the birds.
Goliath, hear this. I do not fear your sword or your spear. Today, our God will help me strike you down. God will use you to remind everyone that He is the one who saves.
Uh-oh. Now you've done it. Goliath will kill you now. Goodbye.
Okay, you know how to use the sling. Tap David to dodge Goliath's spear.